This is Ray Weldy, Lower Southampton Township Board of Supervisors. Welcome to the November 4th, 2020 Budget Workshop. We'll get the budget workshop underway. We have several budgets to address tonight for 2021. And at this time, I'll turn the budget workshop over to Township Manager Joe Galdo. Joe?
Thank you, Board Chair. Peter, if you could put up the library component. Thank you, Peter. Okay, as far as let's say it this way, they sent over a revision the other day. I believe the whole board was CC'd and received that mail. Before you right now is the one that we initially presented to the library board. We want to take into consideration the various line items that we differ on. So highlighted for you tonight is basically the areas that we have some differences on. Is Dennis available? Dennis?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Dennis. Dennis,
So,
the main things, if we can, Dennis, if we could kind of go down to show where the differences are between the two, the library's version versus the township version, and then we could proceed with the various appropriations, being the expenditure side as well as the revenue side, which is important also. It looks like on the state share revenue, I think we have the same numbers. As far as the two differences that we currently have is the pay-per-use charge and the fundraising component. I believe right now you have the pay-per-use charge at 3,500 and 8,000 for the fundraising, while the township basically was looking to see if there could be a slight increase on the copier side as far as the charging per pieces of paper.
right, that just won't work because people will stop coming here when they could go to Staples or any other library and do it cheaper.
Okay, and then as far as the cost, it covers the cost of your copier, then the allocation of the 3,500?
Say that again?
Does the 3,500 cover your annualized cost for your copier or copiers?
I believe so.
Okay, all right. And then as far as the fundraising, you have down at 8,000. I know with this being a COVID year, it's going to be hard. As far as sending out the fundraising or solicitation letters, when do you think they would go out?
We hope for the first week in December.
Okay, so
some revenue,
okay,
that'd be some revenue in 2020.
got it.
And we just started doing this kind of thing, and you can see from the record, we've never come close to 20,000 or 45,000. So I just think it's unreasonable to think that.
Well, I think part of it is that not only just the solicitation part, that there's other components of fundraising. And I think that's where we kind of differ there. So the solicitation, as far as the letter, that's something that we put forward in the prior year. That was the first tryout year, but there's other things that can be done, just as we're asking the two fire companies, the emergency services, being the EMT side. So we are asking for other, let's say, funds or entities to make sure that from a nonprofit type world that they continue to do the fundraising element. I don't think it's a one-time event that you just send out the solicitation. I think there needs to be other events in here, because if you are able to get to that $20,000, that certainly helps you in the future. So right now, just having 8,000 or 6,000, whatever the dollar amount, the 8,000, I'm sorry. I think that we need somebody to kind of drive that home at the library, as far as being, you got to kind of think of yourself as almost as a nonprofit type entity. You do get an allocation from the township, and you only get a really de minimis state share in reality for your operations. So I do think that the fundraising component needs to be kind of headed up and speared. That's just my perspective on that. I don't know if the board wants to weigh in on that stuff.
No, we understand that, Joe. We hear it. We talk about it at our meetings.
But do you have a plan for it? Are you planning for doing more fundraising?
You know what?
I'm talking.
Our kind of fundraising has all changed since COVID, so we have to go back and rethink.
Right.
So that's where we are.
So I agree with Joe that there's got to be more of an emphasis on that.
And there's things you can do, Dennis, like up at school, the PTO. I'm not saying this is for the perfect thing for the library, but the PTO up at Maple Point is doing a fundraiser, and they're selling half dozen certificates for Fritz's sticky buns from Fritz's Bakery, they're highly popular sticky buns. And what happens? People buy them, and then they drop the certificate off, or they mail the certificate to the people, and then the people can go get those sticky buns, this half dozen sticky buns for Thanksgiving or Christmas or something like that. And that's a really successful fundraiser. And it's something I just saw that today. It's something that I think something like that could work for the library, where maybe people bought something and you could offer certificates for it. And it's not something that you have to lay any money out for, except to maybe mail the certificates out, and you could make and that would be something. Then once you started it, then you can do it every year or a couple times a year.
Okay.
And even like the fire companies do, as far as like the handbag sales, that seems to work. There may be an initial outlay of some money, and maybe we could cover you there and kind of entice you to do that, because I think ultimately you're going to have some form of fundraising to make it work for you guys. I just see how it is in other municipalities, and I think the fundraising is kind of here to stay. So we're going to need a little direction on that, and somebody to drive that home for us.
And perhaps you could get some advice from, like, for instance, other libraries that do a lot of fundraising. I believe Upper Southampton Library does a lot of fundraising.
We're going to be looking into it.
Okay.
Yeah, so good.
So we'll move down to the other section, which is the transfer from the general fund. Previously, we submitted $448,000. In the most recent submission from the library, they have it at $500,000.
Right.
I feel that I can make the budget work. That's just my perspective on it, but I think it's fair. They're coming down to, I believe, 20% in township support, and I think it's a good faith effort on part of the library here. So that's just my perspective, and if the board wants to weigh in, they can do so.
Hey, Dennis, this is Ed Shannon. I was just curious, how do you feel your marketing is going to change to bring in some more money? You said that it's all changed from when it was.
Right. We haven't had a chance really to lay down any concrete plans.
And you said it's going to change from the past. What fundraisers have you had in the past that?
Exactly, Debbie. I mean, you know that we've only just started.
Right.
What has changed, though, Dennis?
It's going to change. I mean, we just know that we have to do something differently. And I'll tell you, the last couple board meetings, we've been just doing the budget. So we haven't had real much talk to discuss that.
Yeah, I mean, the possibility of doing face-to-face fundraising is kind of dried up, during this.
Sure.
If that's what you're talking about, Dennis. But there are other options that you can do it long distance, like we said, certificates, or drive up hoagie sales, or I don't know, just some of it's corny, but some of it really raises a decent amount of money. And I think when you involve food and stuff like that in it, you might get a decent turnout.
And Fallsington Library is doing an online auction. Next week, I'm going to be watching a webinar about online fundraising.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay. And now going into the expenditure component, I believe the library has it at 200, their most recent version, $299,854. Dennis, now, as far as that, what's your perspective on the 299?
That's going to be staff cuts of $96,000 plus dollars. So that's going from 365 hours a week to 257 hours a week for staff.
So are you then like just give me examples, like on a Tuesday, what do you, if you're open on Tuesday?
Joe, I'm not going to give examples because I haven't talked to my staff about this. And they're probably listening.
No, I'm talking about currently. I'm not talking about now, how we're going in the future. I'm talking about like if you have Tuesday as your day, what is your complement of staff that you have in the office? Just as an example.
You'd have probably 2 people in the office. You'd have 1 person at the information desk. You'd have 2 people at the circulation desk, and you'd have me.
Okay.
And you'd have people working remotely.
Okay. So you have about 6 then, basically, plus a remoter. Okay. Okay. So as far as hospitalization, I believe you have it at 55,000. I think we could take that down for you guys down to 50,736.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
I think you could have some savings there. And I also believe, hold on, there's another line item or 2. Hold on. The utilities, I believe you have it at 29,000. We were, I believe you could drop that down to around 24,500.
What was that again, Joe? I'm trying to follow you.
That's all right. Under utilities, you had a budget item of 29,000. I think you can reduce that down to 24,500.
That's it for.
I don't know how you get utilities down that much.
Well, we're projecting that your utilities for 2020 is going to be around 20,000, almost like 21,000. So even if there is a slight increase, and we're not foreseeing a current increase, we got some decent rates that Peter is able to work on. We're projecting, I think, a conservative number of 24,500 right now.
Okay.
So you should be able to save some money there.
What does that cover, Joe?
That would be their gas and their electric for the most part, and I do believe there may be the water component. I'm not 100% certain, but for the most part, I know for a fact it's the gas and the electric.
Okay.
All right, and then the other thing, as far as the audit, like for this year, the township covered your audit expenditure, so there was no outlay of $1,000 for this current cycle, so that you don't have to worry about. I'm hopeful for next year that we could cover that also for you, but I would just have the appropriation there just in case for that $1,000. I think that was about the gist of it, of the changes. If there's any other ones, we can certainly talk with Carissa, hammer that down and lock down all our numbers. But the main thing was coming to an agreement on the allocation or the transfer from the general fund. So that seems to be a workable solution right now. So does the board have any more questions for Dennis?
I have a question. There
Yes, please.
increase for furniture and equipment. Was there something new bought this year? This is Susan.
Carissa, what was in that line this year?
We did buy before COVID. We did buy Kindle Fires. We were hoping to replace our old children's computers, and we were gonna put out Kindle Fires instead. But then COVID happened, and we weren't able to put them out yet. So that was a kind of a big of expense that we had in our furniture and equipment for this year. typical line items that go in the furniture and equipment is for our copiers, our leases for that, and the water delivery that we get about every month.
What the water?
Can I say about the computers is that they are actually outdated, not computers, they're actually game machines that just are too old and are falling apart. And so we thought we would have make up space so we wouldn't have the table, and we would use the Kindles or the iPads for the kids.
And was that the ones that the friends were going to pay for half and you were paying for the other half?
No, that's something else.
Okay.
That was going to be the iPad lab that we're not doing.
Okay.
Question, isn't you mentioned the copier contract, would that be under maintenance contracts? And also what you said there was a cost for water? What is the cost? What is water?
It's for the water cooler that we have that we get from Ready Refresh Nestle. We put that into that budget line because we also pay the rent for the cooler that we have here.
That for employee usage or public?
It's for employee usage.
Okay.
And then the only other item that they were actually, there's one item I forgot, was the commercial insurance. It looks like they could get it much cheaper, so they would be doing it for $15,000, and that would cover, I believe, around $2.4 million worth of commercial property liability, as well as the contents of the building, the inside part being like around $450,000 with a deductible of $1,000. So they were able to save some money there. So they would move on that particular line item, and the township would take that off on our side as an adjustment on our side. So it looks like they'll end up saving money going this route for them, which is good.
And Deb Kaplan talking, and Dennis, I had asked about, does that cover the workman's comp? And you said you're pretty sure it does, so you're absolutely sure it does cover the workman's comp.
Yes, because we talked to them this morning.
Okay, good.
Can I say one thing about what I'm looking at right now? Is that Joe has us using $91,000 of the reserve. That's something that we're not comfortable doing because we don't know what's going to happen next year. There's been no talk about what's coming with the funding. So we made a lot more cuts so we don't have to use that all up, so we can preserve the funding, the reserve.
We're giving them as much as we possibly can, correct, Joe?
Yeah, I think it's a fair number. Knowing what we're going to be ahead of us in 2021 with regard to EIT tax and so forth. Next year is going to be a challenge year, so we're trying to hunker down. All the departments, for the most part, are hunkering down as best as we can. And there's only X amount of resources that we have, and so there is some reallocation of funds and expenditures across a myriad of 19 or so funds that we have. So, I think this is kind of the best scenario as far as for at least the 2021 model. And we'll see how 21 ends, and we'll take it from there.
Hello, this is Ann Berlin. May I say something?
Sure.
Hi, Ann.
Hi, Deb. We went back and looked at the contributions from the township since the beginning. In 2009, up to 2009, the funding came from millage. And then the millage stopped at the end of 2009. I don't know why it stopped, but there was no more millage after 2009. And then the lowest funding that the township had given the library, it was $570,000 in 2011, $530,000 in 2012, and the lowest was $520,000 in 2013. And then it was $570 to $585 until last year it went up to $640. So the library has never been funded at anything lower than 520, and that was about 10 years ago. So obviously expenses have gone up since then just by mere inflation. So if we have a $91,000 loss in 2021 and we have the same funding, we will run out of money in 2022 because there won't be anything left in the reserve. So I just to be aware of that, there'll be $66,000 left at the end of 2021 with a $91,000 loss. And that won't cover a $91,000 loss for 2022. So just to keep in mind, before we had millage, and then we were running on 570,000, and then just last year it was 640, and now we're back down to 500, which is the lowest it ever was. So
Joe, what were we prepared to, had this been a normal year, Joe? What would we have?
We probably would have been at the current level that they were and that they got paid this year. But
so 640.
It was 640, right? And the reason the supervisors determined it was 640 because it was an awareness that the library was going to run out of money from the reserve. And that's why the supervisors decided to make it 640, because we had this discussion a year or two ago.
And that's why fundraising is going to be key.
Right, but even with the fundraising, we're still running at a $90,000 loss with a fundraising, which most likely we won't be able to raise that amount of money. But even if we do, it's still a $90,000 loss.
What's the materials and state aid?
That's books and publications, basically.
Well, explain to me a little bit more. It's $85,000. I'm just curious what that means.
They get reimbursed by the state. The state reimburses for their expenditures. The state will reimburse them based on some sort of formula. And it's fine for them to make those type of expenditures because for the most part, they do get reimbursed. But again, with the state having their own financial issues, that's part of a global issue too. It's not just a township issue. You got a global issue going on right now.
Yep, but we're paying them $85,000. Is that what that means?
So, may I explain it? The state aid, which we choose to use for our collections and our materials, every library can choose how they use it. That is a revenue. What this is what we spend on all our materials. So there's no reimbursement actually.
What is the 35,000 or the money that you get then from the top?
They just give it to us.
But that's not based off of some formula dealing with your books.
It is not dealing with the books. Dealing with the population. Like I said, we choose how to spend that 30,000, and that's where we get our 85,000 or 92,000 number. But that goes for the materials, the things that circulate here.
Dennis, I have a question for you too. If maybe you could elaborate for me. The commercial insurance cost has doubled in the last 2 years. It's gone from 18,900 to a projection of 37,600 for this year. What can you? I don't know. Is that attributable to any one specific item, or is that just the market?
I can answer that for Dennis. Basically, in the other years, the prior years, basically the township was subsidizing the cost. In this given year, this past year, we can no longer subsidize the cost, and so this kind of right-sized their actual cost based off of their square footage and the cost of their building. The township expenditure in totality for commercial insurance was well over $220,000, which is a composition of all your various insurances, a little bit of the workers' comp component, and so forth. So all that is an appropriate share is what they paid in this given year. That's why you have a little bit of a spike there.
So what does this insurance cover, Joe?
That's for commercial liability. Hypothetically, if the building burned down, there's nothing left of the building, they could go back and build the building at least close to that $2 million threshold and with contents of at least $450,000.
So that costs $3,000 a month to insure that building?
Based off of the square footage, the township, if you compare the square footage based off of what we have here in the township building, the police, and all our other little miscellaneous buildings, that's the cost.
Right, so Ray, the number that we got this morning from our broker was more like 15,000 or 12,000. So that'll be a big savings there.
Okay. And that's why I was asking. That seems a little on the high end to me.
Yeah, I'm still confused by the 85,000, which is books, materials, and state aid. That's a big number, and I'd like to have some clarification of what that covers, other than just books, materials, and state aid.
That's okay. It's probably poorly labeled because all it does is it'll pay for our DVDs, our books, our Vox books, our museum passes if we buy them, our music CDs, our video games, all the books from across all the age groups. Am I missing something? Our hotspots. I mean, we buy thousands of books.
Okay. All right. Do we want to move on to the other budgets then?
Yeah, we have 32 minutes to
Yep.
do the other 6 or 7.
All right. So Dennis, then what we'll do is we'll true up our worksheet with your worksheets, and then we'll give you a final version so both sides have the same numbers. All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you.
Thanks,
And
Dennis.
Carissa
Thanks,
and Ann.
Ann.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Gary.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Good night.
All right. If you go to Public Works, thank you, Peter. As far as Public Works Department right now, as far as this given year, we're staying true to form. What you will see is that you really won't see, like, in just say highway salaries in this given year, even though we have a reduced staffing level, the costs basically are still showing up predominantly in your O1 fund. Some things you could offset into the liquid fuels component, which we'll do tonight also. But liquid fuels has to be related. You have to work on items that are liquid fuels related or street related, so to speak. So
Joe,
a lot of yeah.
Can I ask you a question before you go any further? I hate to butt in like this. The salaries that you're talking about or that you'll be referring to for 2021, is that for a full contingent of employees or the employees that we have now, not including the employees that are furloughed?
It basically, the way I'm doing it is I'm setting up with kind of the appropriations that we carried in 2020. I would feel more comfortable because if COVID were to just drop off the face of the earth and we were to need to kind of move staff around, I would like to err in 2021 with additional appropriations hanging around just in case. With that being said, it does take into consideration, not a full complement, but a most complement that would be coming back hypothetically. I don't want to scooch down the appropriation so bad that, God forbid, something changes, that we're not flexible enough to handle costs as they come in. So right now, but the main thing in 2020 is that the numbers look high, even though we have a small staff. What I'm saying is that a lot of the salary is based off of O1 activities or general fund activities that we can't put into sewer because they're not sewer related, or we can't put into liquid fuels fund because they're not liquid fuels related. So you're still seeing a fair amount of activity here under like highway salaries for in the 2020 budget. So we're all staying true to form. We're all under budget for the most part, under everything. The 2020 budget, we're at 1.1 million. We're projected about $908,000 worth of expenditures. And that's with Mark doing a fair amount of work, especially like with the tree activities that he's been doing, a little bit of storm, sewer, and drain work that they've done, and so forth. So 2020 is doing very well as far as the way Mark is handling it. And as far as the 21 budget, again, we're probably erring on moral and caution, having enough appropriations there, and we're about 1.107 million. So it's a little bit lower, but I would rather not take away the appropriations if we need flexibility in the future. So that's basically Public Works. We had some savings there on the health insurance, of course, to having a smaller cadre of personnel. But I kind of just only slightly reduced it going into 21. Fuel expenditures were a little light, and that's partly due to COVID and partly due to the cost structure of gasoline. Who knows next year if that changes, under the presidential election. Maybe that spikes, maybe it doesn't. Who knows? So I want to make sure we have enough appropriations here also. So if you could go, does the board have any other questions on the 01 Public Work side?
Yeah, Joe, I have a quick question for you.
Yes, sir.
It's Kim Kutsaratis. I see here in the actual overtime for 2019 was quite a bit higher than the year before. And as I scroll over, I see we're looking at 13.5 you have built into the budget for overtime. How about if we get hit with a heavy winter this year and we require our men to come in? Are we going to be okay with just 13.5?
That would be under liquid fuels, Ken, for the most part. That would probably be a liquid fuels event. So you'll see just a scooch on the overtime, and if not, then if we don't have enough appropriations there, we could also work on the 01 fund if needed.
Okay, all right.
You do have some duality of coverage there. So you are seeing a dip. This year was really a lot less overtime as in past years. But maybe 2019 had, for various reasons, I'd have to dig a little bit in 2019, to be honest with you.
That's fine. I'm personally hoping for no snow this year, but you just never know what's going to happen. So
yeah. So I think Mark's doing very well with his complement of resources and very well with his expenditures too. So if that's all for Public Works, we'll end Public Works and jump into liquid fuels. Thank you, Peter. All right, as far as liquid fuels, this year we received the state allocation of $587,000. Going for 2021, I would tend to believe that there may be a slight dip. I'm not 100% certain, so I conservatively budgeted for $550,000. As far as the Turbeck revenue, that seems to be pretty static. And miscellaneous revenue, again, you had the slight spike there, and that's solely from that Wawa knockdown in the traffic signal that we had. All this is basically the reimbursement that we got. So a lot of that $80,000 is us finally getting paid for that event. So, and if you could go to the expenditures now, Pete, thank you, sir. And as far as expenditures, again, we're following the same model that we've done the last 3 years, and that's for middle grade to winter. We'll have snow removal. You'll have your little bit of overtime there for the most part. Some maybe some slight double time going for 2021. We had some appropriations there. We have enough in supplies of $135,000 just in case we do get a bad winter. I think for the most part, everything's staying true to form on the salary side, and also I believe on materials and supplies for the most part, we're doing very well there. So if you look, Pete, if you could go back to the top on the revenue, you'll see that our fund balance has grown actually over the past couple of years, and what we've been trying to do is strategically build that reserve up. And for 2021, we're a little bit over $1 million we're projecting, and that actually can help us, God forbid now with the RDA being in jeopardy a little bit with funding, if we do come up short on road improvements or road program, we do have access of a fairly robust liquid fuel fund right now. So we've been able to build it up little by little, 100 there, 100 there. So in reality, we could afford to take a hit next year if we got $0 hypothetically from RDA for road improvements or road program. So right now for 2021, Pete, if you can jump back to the expenditure, I believe I have a placeholder of 550,000 that's sitting there, and also 550,000 that we have sitting there. And we could, if we do get anything from RDA, that's great. We also have the 20 fund sitting on the sideline, as well as the 30 funds if we need it for road improvements. So I think we got a best case scenario here with our liquid fuels fund. We've used it wisely over the last couple of years, and I think we're sitting good, even if we have a downturn next year as far as expenditures. Any questions from the board?
No.
Looks like good planning to me, Joe.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you, sir. All right, next one up, I believe is the fire marshal, I think, Peter. Is that it? Yep. Thank you, sir. All right. So as far as fire inspections, over the past couple of years, fire inspections average around a little bit over 200,000 to a max, I believe, at 1 year, 221,000. In this given year, we're a little bit behind the April, and again, that's part of COVID, where we weren't out on the street, we weren't billing, and we didn't feel it was fair to send out, billing notices and collect on things when people were basically shut down for periods of time. So we're trying to catch up with our resources, and Ryan's doing a good job with that. We're going to come back in December, do another group of billings, and try to collect, which will actually help us. The monies that are due in 2020, we'll be able to kind of push into the 2021 budget. So that's what I'm hoping for. So you'll see a slight spike around 240,000 sitting under fire inspection for next year. So as far as the fire marshal's office, again, we want to kind of change the paradigm a little bit. You'll see the expenditures basically for fire marshal payroll ending around 176, and that's basically some payouts that we had to pay for vacation and accrued time and so forth. And that's why we have it at that kind of level. It's still way below our budget line item. For next year, we're looking for a complement of individuals to join the fire marshal's office as far as the inspections and assisting with fires. So that's why you'll see a bump over there for 267,000. Also, Ryan, do you want to go over some of the line items with some of your typical expenses that you have?
Sure.
Thanks,
Under our other group and benefits, that's our workman's comp, short-term and long-term disability. Under supplies and postage, that's our AD batteries and our AD pads for us and the cops. Also covers our postage to mail out our certificates and our letters to let people know we're coming out for their inspections, and some safety vests and other equipment. The fire marshal's maintenance, that covers our cell phones, our air cards for our laptops and the computer, so we can get the fire and the EMS calls over there. Our gas meter, to get them calibrated every 3 months, and our different memberships for our fire investigation groups. And then the equipment for the FM, that is if we need any items for the truck, we do have our QRS, which is our special service for the EMS, is due up in April. Sometimes when they come out and do our inspection, they tell us we have to add different add some equipment in there, so we have that there just in case we have to add any equipment.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. The other part,
when Ryan said the truck, is there an allocation for 2021? Should this, for I don't know, for some reason, should this mini pumper that we've put in for through the RDA need additional equipment such as hoses or anything like that, or to be retrofitted in any way? Do we have anything put aside for that?
That equipment, well, that would come out of basically out of the 30 fund if we do need something like that. This equipment is for smaller type items that could go in any of the fire marshal's vehicles. not just
Okay.
necessarily that particular vehicle. It could be any of the vehicles that they may or may need for inside that they're responding to calls. One of the things you will see a little bit of a spike on the uniform allocation. If you have an additional bodies, you're going to have additional uniform allocation. The same thing on the corresponding with your health insurance, you'll see a little bit of a spike there. But for the most part, it's, it's still lean and mean, but allowing the fire marshal's office to operate in a more robust manner. So I think we're sitting good with the amount of appropriations there. It is going up. Last year we had it at 390. This year it's at 463. So it is a slight increase there. We're again reallocating our resources through all, for all the departments and through all our funds as we see fit. So is there any questions here for the fire marshal's department or office? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. Thank you, Ryan. All right, next one I believe is sanitation. Okay, hold on, bear with me. All right, for sanitation, I'm happy to report that there would be no increase again for the 2021 year, which is a good thing. We're basically getting good on the collection aspect. Debbie Doniker is doing a good job down there with us, helping us. And as far as the various fees that we have set aside there, like sanitation fees, legal fees, interest, that's the stuff that Denise collects on for us, that since the county no longer does that work. I believe that was dating back from 2017 that was implemented. So what you'll see is Denise's collections, and she's been doing a real good job with their collection efforts there. Also with the trash certificate fees, that's one of the other items. But for the most part, we're projecting the budget to be in line with 1.9 million, and again for 21, 1.9 million. Could you go to the expenditures, Pete? Thank you, sir. Okay. Pete? All right, thank you, Pete. As far as the legal part, where the SWIB/SWAC, that's basically it helps us with our grants. On the recycling grant for next year, I believe it's the 2020 grant application. Right now, I have conservatively budgeted, like I think $75,000 up there. They're projecting it to be around 90, 92. I took a very conservative approach, again, on the revenue side. As far as the expenditure, 16 is probably a max. I doubt it'll be even close to that, but I want to again have extra appropriations if needed. On your hauling, the hauling again is Muscaro. You got a small general recycling expense, disposal again is Wheelabrator. That actually component is kind of a hybrid, and maybe I might tweak the description on there. That you'll see the spike in cost there, and that's us paying for the recyclable component, the recyclables. So that started in 2020. So right now we're building a complement for $585,000 for 2021. Your yard waste, you could see a drastic spike there. We're projecting to end the year around $102,000, which is way over the budget of for 2020 of $70,000. We're more in the realm in the 50s in the past. And with COVID being present, yard waste went drastically increased. So I wanted to leave extra appropriations here for $108,000.
Joe, aren't we can I ask you a question about that? Aren't we locked into a contract with them where we pay the same fee regardless of how much yard waste is picked up?
Well, it's the volume of yard waste. That is true, but it's the volume of yard waste that drastically increased. You're talking about more tonnage. And if you have more
but the frequency of the pickups was reduced.
All I'm saying is what we got basically on the tonnage aspect, it was drastically higher, and thus you had more yard waste that was paid out. So and that's coming from the tickets that they sent over to here. And I mean, Peter could verify and comb through it just to make sure that everything's okay with that. But right now, as of 11/2, you spent around $97,000 just on the yard waste aspect.
It just seems odd to me that if some people didn't get picked up for 2 weeks or 3 weeks at a time, how come the tonnage is increased by $32,000?
No, this is the stuff that there's a couple other items that are behind the scenes that we're working with Mascaro, trying to get a better hand of because of them not picking up, and then also taking whether it be the yard waste and or other refuse going to them instead of going to the waste management component. They then owe X amount of tonnage to waste management. So we're kind of going through the gyrations and verifying the cost there. So Peter's has a little mini project over there and is working with Mascaro as well as waste management, trying to right size it to make sure we're paying for the appropriate amount of tonnage. But
because when you look at 2019, what we paid for the tonnage in 2019 and what we're paying for the tonnage in 2020, that's almost a 100% increase in tonnage. It's like they picked up twice as much.
Well, that's again, that's what Ms. Mascaro was saying, is that it drastically increased. So
I know they say that the trash increased, that people put out like 30% more trash, but this is under yard waste, right?
That's what's in that expenditure line item is solely yard waste. We could have Peter go through it and comb through it just to make the re-verify. All I'm saying is that the expense, whether if it's in yard waste and it's incorrectly posted, it's going to go on one of those other line items. Right now, your yard waste, as we know it, the way it's posted, is you have a drastic expense. And from what we were told by Mascaro is that we had increased tonnage in yard waste. So that's what we were hearing. So I could recheck it, but I don't think the appropriations are going to change there. But we'll have it as a project for Peter to get his arms around. Okay. But other than that, you'll see some slight increases on the hauling aspect because you're going to have you have a slight increase there. And in reality, I believe Peter on the next slide has the remaining fund balance.
Well, before we move on, I want to go back to what we were just talking about. So in our contract with the yard waste, like Ray was saying, it's in our contract, right? When we pay what we pay, but it's saying if we have an excess amount, we pay more depending on poundage.
It's a flat, to my knowledge, it's a flat dollar. That's a flat dollar amount.
I think we just sent Joe into the twilight zone.
Yeah, what is it?
I'm visiting Mars right now. I'm having some cheese. No, I get what you're saying, Deb. We'll check into it, but it's a flat dollar amount times your tonnage component. Your recycling is a different component right now. Recycling is based off a pricing index, and with that pricing index, it's times by your tonnage there. So what we paid in past years under the past contract, we paid zero. In this given year was the first year where we had to pay for recycling efforts. So you're going to have that cost. Now, it kind of is what it is, but we could certainly check. And if it's in the wrong bucket, we'll right size it. But I don't believe that's the case, but we'll double check it. So, okay. Peter, if you go to the third page, the other page with the fund balance.
I will double check as well, but we did confirm the number. It is for yard waste. So.
If you could bring that up, the fund balance. So the fund balance, we're projecting it to be around 1 million, 1.2 million. So we may be able to do this for one more year, but the good thing is that for this given year, there is no increase. While other townships in the past, last year, they due to the recyclables, they had to increase their rates. We're again holding the line and not having an increase in this given year with regard to the sanitation. So again, we're passing on savings, and we've been doing this, I believe, from 2014. On average, saving the resident about $240,000 to $250,000 times 6,000 and some odd parcels or buildings. So Anything else on sanitation? Okay, hearing none. I think the last one up is zoning. Okay, if you could bring that up, Pete. Thank you, sir. Okay. As far as this given year, as you can see, the bottom line in revenues, we're projecting a very good year, just as we had last year. And this is even with us being technically shut down for a period of time. That $671,000 projection of revenues through those various line items shows the amount of volume that occurs in our zoning office. The ladies here do a very good job. Mike has been doing an exceptional job with indoctrinating the ladies with his processes that he would like to see in place. So I think we got a good fit going on, and you're seeing good positive revenue numbers in 2020. And as far as 21, we're going to see a slight dip that we're projecting. And again, that's another conservative estimate. And the one line item you are seeing that we didn't have in previous years, that's the zoning permit, and we're projecting on average around 15,000 hypothetically. We'll see how that goes. Mike, do you want to say what type of items or buckets would be going into that zoning permit?
Yeah, that's your uses for the land. That is sheds, fences, like patios. Decks have zoning permits and building permits. So it's basically anytime you use the land, change the use, those type of things.
Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you. And so, okay. And then as far as the expenses, Pete, if you could drop down. Thank you, Pete. Okay. As far as the expenditures there, you're seeing that basically on the payroll side of $158,000 that we're projecting for this given year under this model. Next year, we're projecting it to be about $132,000 there. There was some payouts of accrued vacation and time and so forth. And that's why you have it at $158,000 right for the 2020 year. The other items, again, you have some healthcare savings, health insurance savings there. We're projecting around $43,250 for this year. For 2021, we should be around $42,000, maybe a little lower. As far as zoning expenditures or zoning expenses there, that's your typical, I believe, BIU. A little bit of right now, you're seeing Mike's Barry Izzet expenditures there, and that's why you're seeing a little bit of a spike on the 2020 at being $189,000. And that may be maybe a little bit overboard as far as appropriations there. But for next year, we're right sizing it. We're splitting the zoning expenses with basically zoning consulting, and Mike, as well as any other consultants that we use, will be coming out of the zoning consulting bucket. And that's about 115,000 and change. There's some small capital purchases, and it's just basically some like basically Surface Pros that we may get. We might get one this year, one next year. So that would be for Kevin on the street. And as far as the, let's see, what else? The pension expense, you're seeing a drop on your pension expense. Previously last year, we budgeted $30,000, almost $31,000. For next year, it's $14,000. So you're having some savings there. Basically, everything's looking good on the expenditure side in zoning, and on the revenue side, looking very well over there. And the one thing I will say is that the residents do pay their fair amount of permits, and which is a compliment to the residents being above board and paying for permits, because in a lot of other towns, you have to chase down people to pull a permit. So thank you to the residents on that. But for the most part, any other questions on the zoning?
Joe, does the consulting fee for zoning, the 7,500 to 115, is that because we took on Mike and Barry Izzet and Associates? Is that under consulting?
That's a predominant cost there, but it's also built in for any other type of consulting or consultations that we may get in the given year. So it's a combination of things, but it's predominantly for Barry Izzet. And so you can see that cost in a better format versus being bundled up with other zoning expenditures.
Right.
Right. And Ray, just a point, the way the fee schedule is being restructured, some of the fees that are coming off the building permits are going to it'll be a net zero. It'll wipe that out. So
Yeah.
the township won't be on the hook for it. The
Well,
permit
and it
will
looks
cover
like
that fee.
it looks like even when you couple that with the regular zoning salary and the consulting fee, it's still less than what we were paying total prior to this.
You don't have to pay me vacation and a pension unless you want to. So
I was thinking the same thing.
We just
Frank
buy,
Dillon wants to, but we don't have
buy
that
him
kind of
food.
money.
We just buy him food. He's good. He's good.
yeah,
We'll
thanks,
keep him fed.
thanks, Joe.
You're welcome. But that's as far as, so we would be ending the budget aspect. If we see, can we go to basically the court order for the IU, for the Bucks County IU, which is item 2, real quick?
Yeah, Patrick Armstrong, he's here for that, right? To give us a little update. Sure.
Pat,
I
a
can
couple
give you a quick
minutes.
update.
Heads up.
So if you recall, you entered into that stipulation and agreement back in August of 2020. Since that time, I'm sorry? All right, since that time, the judge approved the stipulation by order. We recently received the court order. So now your township engineer has reviewed the stipulation plan. There's a review letter out there dated November 2nd of 2020 from the township engineer with a couple comments, nothing significant. So now tonight, the stipulation plan is before the board for kind of like a formal approval, subject to compliance with the stipulation, the engineer's review letter of November 2nd, 2020, and also subject to them entering into the stormwater O&M agreement as well as the development agreement. I've provided both the IU and the school district drafts of the development agreement and stormwater O&M agreement. I think we're pretty close, if not there. They initially requested some changes, but since then, I think we're pretty much on the same page. The IU will be posting the financial security associated with the project. I believe we just got the court approved, or I think we just got the approved cost estimate from the engineers yesterday or today. So that in a nutshell is where we're at and kind of what we're looking for from you tonight. Just if you have any questions, I'm hopeful that the township engineer will be at the meeting. If you have any questions with respect to the plan, if you want to refresh your memory. But this is pretty much, it's been stipulated to, agreed to, we got the court order, and now you just need to approve the plan consistent with that.
Do you recommend us approving it, Patrick?
I recommend you approving the motion. The action is going to be approving the plan, subject and conditional to compliance with the stipulation. The engineer reviewing and approving, or ensuring that it's consistent with the stipulation, and that the IU and the school district enter into the development agreement and the stormwater O&M agreement. You've already approved the process by the stipulation, so you can't, and it's been court approved, so you can't go back at this point. Now it's just a matter of confirming that the plan is consistent with the stipulation, which, subject to that November 2nd review letter, I think it pretty much is.
Okay. Thanks.
Yep.
Right. And then, did you want to say anything, Carl, on that one? Real quick.
Carl?
No, everything is fine. I've looked at everything. The stipulation, they basically met the stipulation. So I'm good.
Okay, thank you, Carl. So it's 7:31. Did we want to start or go to the other meeting, the second meeting?
Yeah, I have 7:31. If there's nothing else to cover, I think, do we have to back out of this one and then sign back in again?
And then sign back in again. Yes.
Okay.
Hey, Joe, it's Matt. You got 30 seconds I can have real quick?
It's 29 now, Matt.
All right, I'll take the whole minute. I know last meeting, the board had asked me to work up some costs related to some recent Back the Blue events, dating back to August 30th, and then another on October 17th. I have, with the meetings being so close together, I began to work on it immediately after the last meeting on Thursday. Lisa began payroll on Friday. She was also working on it on Monday. We had off yesterday for election day. Lisa was off today for a personal matter. So I don't have the final totals. I have talked to the department heads of the respective departments where costs were incurred. But I don't want to report an inaccurate number. So if you just allow me a little bit of time, I will have something for the board next meeting, which I know is Thursday the 12th.
Ray, one second, Ray. On this, I just got done talking to Peter. He said if you would like, you can run it straight through. If you want to run it straight through into one straight meeting, or we could break it up like we typically do. But since we're at 7:32, we could go into the meeting if you would like, or basically everybody would have to re-sign back in.
It would probably be easier for the board and everyone else technology-wise just to stay on here now, right?
Yes.
Good idea. Good idea.
That's I was directing that towards Ed Shannon, so good.
You're absolutely correct, sir.
Yeah, I don't know if your jitterbug phone could do this a second time, so we'll do.
Oh, it's working very well. Thank you.
Oh my God.
Matt, thanks for that update. So then we'll talk to you on the 12th about that.
Yep, I'll have something a little more put together than the numbers I have now. There was, I know initially I said that they'll be extremely exactly close. When calculating overtime and employees with different seniority and certain things, in order to give you an accurate answer, I just need a little more time.
I asked for that, Matt, so thank you.
No problem, Ed.
All right, thanks.
Okay, so we can continue. We can segue right into the public meeting, right? Since we're still being recorded.
Yes, sir.
Okay, then we'll move on with that if the board doesn't have any objections. Welcome to the public meeting of the Lower Southampton Township Board of Supervisors for November 4th, 2020. This meeting is being held via teleconference and has been duly advertised as such. We'll begin the meeting with, will everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Before tonight's meeting, the board held a budget workshop at 6:30 p.m. The budget workshop was open to the public and duly advertised as such. During the budget workshop, we heard presentations for the 2021 budget for the Lower Southampton Township Library Fund, the Lower Southampton Township Public Works Fund, Lower Southampton Township Liquid Fuels Fund, Lower Southampton Township Fire Marshal's Office, the Lower Southampton Township Sanitation Fund, and the Lower Southampton Township Zoning Department. Immediately thereafter, the board received an update from the conflict attorney, Mr. Patrick Armstrong, regarding item number 2 on tonight's agenda, which is a Bucks County Intermediate Unit stipulation that will come up shortly. And then closing out, the board received an update from the Parks and Recreation Director regarding some event costs, and we'll get an exact cost on some recent events at the next meeting. That being said, next up is public comment. Public was invited to send any comment in via email to the Township Administration. Mr. Gaudo, is there any public comment to be read into the record?
Yes, there are two.
Okay.
All right, I will proceed. One is from Ken Couret from 231 Winnegoat, Charlottesville, Pennsylvania. To the Board of Supervisors, my name is Ken Couret, and I reside at the above address. I am also a retired police officer from Northampton Township Police Department. I had the pleasure of attending the Back to Blue event on October 17th that Township Supervisor Kim Kutsuratis organized and executed. I commend Township Kim Kutsuratis for pulling off a fantastic job for the event to get police departments together from all over Bucks and Monco and Philadelphia County. Supervisor Keith Roddice did this at a crucial time in 2020 with the COVID-19 pandemic. The total disrespect and disgraceful civil unrest across the country, where police officers are being attacked or injured and killed most of the time for no just reasons. The police officers in the county go to work every day with a 50-50 chance of coming home every day to their families. What other occupation faced that same odds for their job description? The amount of police supporters from our Bucks County officials that spoke DA Weintraub, County Sheriff Milt Worrell, Congressman Fitzpatrick, Ben Salem, Public Safety Director Fred Arand, to name a few, were outstanding. The hundreds of police support and the motorcycle riders from the numerous clubs that rode from Ben Salem to Lower South was impressive, to say the least. This procession was led by the Ben Salem Highway Division with other township units, and it was incredible. There were several car club members represented as well. There were riders and club members from Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, New York, as well as residents from several townships, all present to support local police and police across the country. The men and women from the motorcycle clubs were ecstatic to be part of the Lower Southampton Township Back to Blue rally, and even asked if this would be an annual event. I spoke to numerous officers and surrounding police departments who were touched with this overwhelming support from strangers, from total strangers, and what a great day it was. Not to mention all the residents of several townships and boroughs that the procession drove through were excited and honored to see the display of support for our township and for our police and fire were also deeply touched. It was well planned and organized, and he thanks Mr. Supervisor Kouteras. Thank you for the next one is dealing with the apartment complex, and that is from Sean Ornament from 512 Old Street Road in Feasterville. I have several questions regarding the proposed apartments. What the required minimum number of parking spots for an apartment complex of 69 apartments, and the minimum amount of parking spots for the proposed retail of 2,550 square feet. At 1.7 acres, can the property accommodate the amount of parking required without easement variations, or will there be underground and multi-level parking? What size apartments are being proposed? Will they be low-income apartments? Will the builder be required to put in sidewalks and landscaping? I feel that a three-story building located in Brownsville Road is going to look out of place in a bad way. The area is a combination of single-family homes and mostly small and pop stores. A three-story, 69-family apartment complex at retail is going to end up in a bad way. It's not going to enhance downtown, and it will amplify existing traffic issues in an area that's making a left turn on the Brownsville Road a perilous feat to begin with. If the board approves this project to move forward, I strongly encourage you to scale back the scope and size to be better in tune with the neighborhood. On the topic of traffic, where will be the traffic study that includes the intersections of Old Street and Brownsville Road, plus Bridgetown Pike and Brownsville Road? There are two main routes to get to the proposed apartment or retail area and are prone to heavy congestion during rush hour. The construction of the proposed building would certainly compound existing traffic issues. And that's it. That's all for public comment, sir.
Thanks, Joe. I think, I mean, there was a lot of questions in that second comment. And I don't know, maybe it would be better if Mr. Italia could respond to that gentleman and answer some of those questions.
Well, I can answer the questions, in that all those questions are legitimate questions, which, if the project comes back before the board, will be addressed as part of land development. All the criteria for the apartments are set forth in the zoning ordinance, and that's online, and people can review that if they choose to. But nothing's been approved. The plan has to come back before you, and all those issues will be addressed.
And I think wasn't the inquiry about low-income apartments, wasn't the rent discussed to be somewhere around 1,350 to 1,650, depending upon the size of the apartment?
Yes,
Correct.
Okay.
So then that's not low income housing.
it is not. But we're not going to discriminate against any type of housing, so.
Right.
We're going to address, the whole issue will be addressed if it comes back before the board.
Thank you, Frank.
Thanks, Frank.
Mr. Gauder, that's it on public comment?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Next up on the agenda is item 1. Item 1 is a consent agenda. It's broken down into 5 subsections. Item 1A would be the approval of minutes of October 28th, 2020. I understand that the minutes that were originally submitted have been amended and revised in 2 minor ways, and they were updated today. Item number 1, an omission was added to it, and item number 3 had a typographical error from the October 28th meeting that was corrected. So those minutes have been amended and updated. Item 1B, approval of budget minutes, October 28th, 2020. Item 1C is approval of accounts payable, November 4th, 2020. And I'll ask Mr. Gaudo. Mr. Gaudo, is there anything, I looked at the accounts payable, I didn't see it, but in case the question comes up, is there anything in the accounts payable that addresses any expenditures to Genova Burns LLC for any type of personnel litigation?
I did not see any in this current batch of accounts payable.
Okay, thank you. Item 1D is approval of certain reoccurring monthly bills, November 4th, 2020. And item 1E would be the approval of escrow release number 2 for Watch Restoration, 1704 Bustleton Pike, Feasterville, PA, in the amount of $38,070.34. Is there a motion we would need a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make that motion.
Motion made by Ms. Kaplan. Thank you. A second?
I'll second that. Susan Cummings.
Thank you. Seconded by Ms. Cummings. We'll do roll call vote alphabetically as we've been doing in these teleconference meetings. Ms. Cummings?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Kaplan?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Kutsaratus?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Shannon?
I'll mute Mr. Shannon.
Yes.
Thank you. And Ray Weldy, I vote yes. So motion to approve the consent agenda is approved with a vote of 5-0. Item number 2 on the agenda is a court order approving a stipulation in the Bucks County Intermediate Unit 22 case, conditional approval of the settlement plan. Mr. Armstrong, Patrick Armstrong, is the conflict attorney that made a brief presentation to the board regarding the stipulation plan. This is an ongoing case that encompasses several years. Maybe Mr. Armstrong could again summarize that for anyone that would be listening.
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you.
And again, I think I failed to introduce myself at the work session. I am conflict counsel. Thank you, members of the board, for appointing me early in the year. But as was just indicated, this is with respect to a stipulation and agreement that was entered into the by the Board of Supervisors, the school district, and the Bucks County Intermediate Unit back on August 18th, 2020. Since that point in time, the stipulation has been filed with the court, and we recently received the court order approving the stipulation in both the zoning hearing board appeal as well as the land development appeal. So what does that mean for members of the board? At this point in time, it would be appropriate for the Board of Supervisors to approve the plan conditional on it complying with and being consistent with the stipulation of August 18th, 2020, as well as ensuring that the plan is revised as needed to address the comments set forth in the Township Engineer Review Letter dated November 2nd, 2020, as well as the Bucks County IU, as well as the school district entering into the requisite development agreement in the stormwater O&M agreement with the township for the plan. The one thing I will note, and I know the township engineer is on the call, and I just noticed it sitting here this evening. I believe the note when you were referencing including a note with the caption of the appeal, I think the caption that's in the review letter is the zoning hearing board appeal. So I would just suggest that we also have them add the land development appeal as well, because both those cases have two separate captions. We want to make sure that we capture both. That's all. So are there any questions from the board for me at this point in time?
Any board members have any questions for Mr. Armstrong? There doesn't appear to be any, Patrick, and I don't have any.
Okay, so unless the township engineer has any comments on the stipulation plan, if the board wanted to entertain a motion conditionally approving the land development plan of the Bucks County IU, subject to and conditional upon them complying with the August 18th, 2020 stipulation and agreement, as well as addressing all the comments in the November 2nd, 2020 Township Engineer Review Letter, and having the Township Engineer confirm that the plan is consistent with the stipulation, as well as having them enter into the development agreement and the stormwater O&M agreement with the township, it would be appropriate at this time.
Thank you,
Can we
Patrick.
hear-
Just
can we hear from
before we
Carl?
do that, that's what I was just going to ask. If
Okay.
Mr. Turner from Tri-State Engineers wanted to weigh in with his opinion so the public could hear. We spoke to him briefly during the work session, but Carl, if you want to go.
Yes. I agree with Patrick. I may have overlooked that there were two stipulations. The court order basically ties the plan into the court order, but the plan does not tie the court order into the plan, which was the reason that I had requested that they add that onto the plan, that the plan was based on or the result of a court order for those two. Since then, they have prepared the appropriate record plans, which is what I wanted, which is what was requested that they add those notes to. With this, I'll have to talk to Patrick to see how we can do that because they prepared the record plans for signature. And we've done they provided their construction costs. So we've done the opinion of probable costs, which was given to Mr. Galdo and Patrick, so that they could prepare the development plan, the development and financial plan to get the letter of credit. We did have a pre-construction meeting where we've went over all of this and basically had this soil conservation district there too, so that as soon as these things are in place, they can start work. But everything is in order.
Thank you, Carl. Any questions from the board members for Carl? There appears to be none. Thank you very much, Carl. Appreciate that. Would anyone like to, from the board, we would need a motion to approve the court order approving the stipulation in the Bucks County Intermediate Unit 22 case, the conditional approval of the settlement plan with the conditions that were previously described by Mr. Armstrong?
I'd like to make that motion, Mr. Chairman, as stated by Mr. Armstrong.
Thank you. Motion's been made by Mr. Koutsaradis. Anyone for a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mr. Shannon. We'll do roll call vote. Ms. Cummings?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Kaplan?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Koutsaradis?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Shannon?
Yes.
Thank you. And Ray Weldy, I vote yes for that. So that court order passes for the stipulation with a vote of 5-0. Thank you, Patrick and Carl.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Next up on the agenda is item number 3. This was briefly broached toward the end of the last meeting when we spoke about some vehicles that we approved for sale on municipal bid, and that would be the approval of the purchase for an automatic tire changer. That's item number 3. That's on the agenda tonight for approval by the board. Maybe Mr. Gatto and or Mr. McDonald want to just give a brief summary of the tire changer.
Yeah, good idea.
Mark?
Mark or Joe?
Mark?
It's not coming off. I'm not
Sorry,
coming off.
I'll take it from here.
You think?
It's all right. He's having some sort of difficulty.
It's not on mute.
That's all right. That's all right. Here, I'll just talk. Okay. Sorry, I'm not on mute. I was trying. So listen, this piece of equipment. I'm sorry. This piece of equipment is from Mohawk Lift Hunter Engineering Company. It's under CoStar State Contract number 4400017609, and it's guaranteed best government pricing. We want to purchase a tire changer with automatic spring arm, so no tire lifting is necessary. Has a smart weight wheel balancer. Has an extra large truck cone kit, which allows us to change the tires on our larger international trucks and heavy equipment and tractors. That's $21,590.11. So we're looking for approval for that.
Is
It'll
this
help immensely.
or is this replacing something or just adding something totally new?
I couldn't hear you. Could you repeat that?
Is this replacing an item? Or is this buying something new?
This is a new item that they would be procuring.
And Mark, you said in your last synopsis at the previous meeting last Wednesday night that this would, in the long run, save the township a significant amount of money for sending these vehicles out to get this work done for these tire changers, and it would be safer all around for the township mechanic using this equipment, changing the tires on the township vehicles that he'll be working on.
Yeah, that's correct. Because the mechanic Gary doesn't have to lift the tires. He can roll them right onto the platform that's got a lifting arm, and it also that'll save injuries. And we're no spring chickens around here anymore. And also, it'll do a lot of the bigger equipment, the tractors, the lawn cutting equipment, some of the heavy equipment, the 3 international bigger trucks we have. You always have to send them out to get any tires and wheel work done. So it'll be a cost-saving item.
And the only other question I have, Mark, is you said it was approved by CoStars, which because of the $21,590 price, when you said Hunter was a CoStars approved company, are they? And I don't know if you know this or not. Are they approved for everything they sell, or they're approved specifically for the cost of this lift? This would be the lowest price that we could get for it.
It would be explicitly for that particular item.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. So we would need an approval for tonight. Thank you. Thanks, Mark.
What was the price on this?
$21,590.11.
And we would be using the proceeds out of the municipal proceeds of approximately $45,000 for the vehicles that we sold on municipal last week?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other board member questions?
All my questions were answered, so I'm good.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, then we would need a motion then to approve the purchase of the automatic tire changer from Hunter based on a recommendation by Mr. McDonald. Anyone like to make that motion?
I'll
make it. Okay, go ahead. Yep, I'll make it if nobody else has.
Got it.
Okay. Mr. Shannon has made the motion. A second?
I'll second that. Susan Cummings?
Seconded by Ms. Cummings. We'll do roll call. Ms. Cummings?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Kaplan?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Kutsaratus?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Shannon?
Yes, and I've got my unmute done, so.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. And Ray Weldy, I vote yes, so that motion passes with a vote of 5-0. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. Last up is item number 4. Consider authorization of the preparation of specs and bid by the traffic engineer for the Oral Grant project. And this refers to the flashing light and crosswalk that's proposed to be installed on Bustleton Pike by Colonial Nissan.
So I can address this. This is,
Yes.
I've sent the Board of Supervisors a memo on September 22nd, laying out the issues. Everyone's familiar with it. It's come up many times. I get reminders every so often from Joe Fiacco about it. So then I send an email to follow up. It's up to you whether you choose to do anything. Just summarizing where we've been, we've had hearings, we've changed the design. There's an estimate from Conflict Engineer for $174,000. To date, $222,400 was paid by Nissan, $66.50 was paid by the Township. The grants for $150,000. Joe Fiacco is looking for authorization to prepare the final design and specs to go out to bid. Remington Vernick's estimate includes $35,000 for design, permitting, and inspection, and a contingency of $23,244. If you do nothing, you've spent $6,650 to date. If you authorize Joe Fiacco to finish the design and specs for an amount not to exceed $20,000, you will have spent $26,650 plus the cost of advertising the bid. Without bids, you cannot make an informed decision. You're risking $26,650 to get the information needed to make a decision. So I think it's time to either, we're not doing the project, forget it, or if you want to consider it, you really can't make a decision until you have bids. You've previously asked, my recollection is you asked the gentleman from Nissan for more money and he wasn't willing to put up any at this time. Once you get the bids, you'll have the information necessary to make a decision, or you just kill the project and move on. So, and I know Joe suggested in various emails to me that, you know, there's other alternatives, splitting costs, doing other things, but I'm not aware of anybody stepping up with more funds. So maybe Joe can comment on that.
No, my only comment is that if we're doing this, if this is a Nissan type product, is that maybe to have some sort of legal exchange with him with regard to outlaying additional funds. If the township is going to be spending an additional $20,000 to make a decision, he should probably share in that cost. And that's all I was saying in those comments.
My recollection at the last meeting is he didn't offer any more money. I don't handle that. You do, Joe, but.
Frank,
And there's grant money sitting here for this, right, Frank? In the amount of $100 and some odd thousand that is solely to be used for this project. And the gap in the money is based on projections that were provided by estimates, and the traffic put the specs together so that we could get an exact cost to determine, is that gap accurate? Is it more than we're projecting, or is it less than we're projecting?
Well, that's what Joe has suggested. How do you make a decision unless you know what the final number is by going out to bid?
Right.
Hey, Frank, I have some questions. If someone was, if we didn't do this project, if we shot it down, didn't do the project, and we had this put before us and someone did get injured in that area, would the township be liable because we had this project that we could have implemented in place? I'm concerned about that.
I don't know that they'd be liable, but they'd certainly be sued. It's similar to the case that was handled last month when you authorized John McMenamin to go to court on your behalf and represent you. And the issue that was raised in that lawsuit was that there was prior reports indicating there was a problem in that area. It was the opinion of Mr. McMenamin in that case that that wasn't what the reports reflected. But here, there's no doubt that we have reports. The chief of police requested this. I mean, it's not that we're not aware that it's a dangerous condition. You'd certainly be sued. Whether or not you're liable is a separate issue.
Frank, let me ask you in a different way. Would we be lessening our risk of litigation if we approve this?
Oh, I certainly think so. I mean, I've sat through and listened to it, and everybody knows the speed coming down the hill from Bustleton Avenue. The cars, no one follows the speed limit, and they're far in excess. And we've been put on notice it's dangerous, and a remedy's been affected, and there's a significant amount of money available. So the answer is yes.
And whatever, and if we should move forward with this would be a approved project that PennDOT would give us the okay for, correct?
Well, right, you'll be spending another 20,000. You'll be out 26. There's an estimate of 174. That estimate may be good or bad. What Joe's pointed out is in that estimate, there's 35,000 for design and permitting and 23,000 for contingencies. He thinks there's enough wiggle room in there that you might get it done, but you'll never know unless you go out to bid.
Right. But my question though was, PennDOT, whatever we decide to, if we decide to move along with this project, PennDOT would be 100% okay with this, correct?
Yes, we have 150 grand sitting.
Okay. All right. Very good.
And Frank, I have a question for you, and it regards the difference, if one does exist, between a state highway and a township-owned roadway. The state highway is maintained by PennDOT. The traffic control signals are PennDOT's responsibility. The traffic control devices, the speed limit signs and so forth are PennDOT's responsibility. Is the liability and the responsibility to maintain the safety on that road the same burden on the township for a state road as it is for a township-owned road like Elmwood Avenue or Woodbine Avenue or something like that? Or is there a difference in the burden of responsibility on us?
No, I think there's more responsibility for the state, PennDOT, because it's their road. I mean, I agree with your assessment that we have more responsibility for our roads rather than the state roads.
So we have to do something because of Joe's report and the speeding and so forth there. I'm just wondering why we're putting out $26,000 to improve PennDOT's road. I mean, we're trying to make it safer for people crossing the road. That part's obvious, but the township's being hit with $26,000 in fees just to determine if we want to move forward with this.
Well, I haven't studied. You meaning the township applied for the grant. And the conditions of the grant were that you have to spend a certain amount of money. I don't know why it's set up that way, but that's the way it is. And I think, Joe, that if we build this, we have to maintain it. Aren't we responsible for the costs?
We would be responsible for the maintenance component. And that's going back to Ray's question. That's why I was asking the question about going back to Nissan again, via through you, and to kind of interact with them. Since my contacts with them have not been successful, maybe you could nudge him in a way where the cost is not borne by the township, and there's more of a 50-50 split.
I kind of see a whole bunch of problems with this process. I know, Joe, I respect Joe's commitment to anything, but for us to do something for a PennDOT road, that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. In addition to that, the one that's going to be benefiting by it is the dealer, Nissan dealer on Bustleton Pike. And is Mark familiar with this process or with what's planned? Because he's going to have to maintain it with snow and whatever else needs to be done with the road. Or is PennDOT going to show up when it needs repairs and, you know,
We'll probably have to call Armor Electric to come out and maintain it and so forth, like we do the other traffic signals.
Yes.
Yeah. And why do we want to take that on ourselves? And as I said, the benefit is to the dealer, and he doesn't want to do anything for us, or he doesn't want to invest any money in it.
The thing that we have to be cautious of, the benefit would really be somebody who didn't get hurt in the long run.
Yeah.
I totally agree with Sue, and that's why I think that even if there was a sharing of the cost, I think that would be more palatable for the board, and because there are a lot of residents in that area that are against, one, the project to begin with, and two is that I want to make sure the township, as far as its financial burden here, it should be an equally shared thing, this cost. You know, I just don't think it's fair to the township as far as us outlaying $20,000 to make a decision that's basically beneficial for it is going to be beneficial for potentially a person driving on that road, but it's also beneficial for his employees crossing that street.
Well, Frank, where'd the $20,000 fee come from? Is that, I mean, that seems, we've spent $6,000 for the architectural renderings and so forth that were done by Safe Highway Engineering. Is $20,000 an overestimate? I mean, would $10,000 do it, or I don't know?
No, Nissan paid $22,400 for the original engineering. We've spent $66.50. Joe Fiacco estimates the cost of repairing specs for the bid will cost not to exceed $20,000. That's where that number comes from. We can't get a price unless we put it out the bid. We can't go out the bid unless we have specs.
So Joe, you'd like?
Well, we can't get any assurances that it's going to save anybody's life. I mean, it doesn't appear to be. I mean, you got a hill in front. You got a hill coming up the hill. I just don't get why we would do something like this and put those things in the middle of the road.
Plus the employees are crossing the street. I know they have to because it's, you know, the other business, their business is on the other side of the street, but they're crossing the street in an unsafe way to begin with. Plus, if somebody hits, if we go through with this, if somebody hits this island, we're going to get sued anyway, right? Whether
if there's an accident, you're getting sued.
Exactly, either or.
Well, Joe, would you like Nissan to be able to split in the $20,000 cost? Is that what you were looking for?
Yeah, I think I'm just looking for them to share the burden. If we're going to do this, and it may have some value to do this, and it'll help move the process along. If there was a sharing of the cost, I think that's more palatable for the residents and for the board. But last time when the residents came here, they didn't want the township to expend any further dollars on the project.
Yeah. Give them a deadline? Could we go back to and give them a deadline of the end of whatever it would be?
We've had multiple meetings, and they didn't offer any more money. So I think the assumption right now is they haven't offered money, and you're either going to vote to authorize this or not. I mean, Joe's pursued this with them at length, and they've said, my recollection is they said no, Joe. Is my recollection incorrect?
Well, he said yeah one time, and then he changed his mind because he called on the 1 December it was, and he said, let me talk to my partner, but it shouldn't be a problem. And then after he kind of changed his mind and said no, that he wasn't willing to spend any further.
Is PennDOT approving this, whatever it may be?
PennDOT approved the project and a grant for $150,000.
Well, my question really is, are they okay with whatever design we come up with? Because it's a state road.
Yes,
They are?
yes, Joe's already, he designed it once and redesigned it and went back to the state. I'm
Right.
99% sure that's the answer, but I'm sure it is. I know it's gotten it.
I mean, maybe before we commit to, and just not arbitrarily, but maybe if we just give a blanket yes for $20,000 to get the specs in the bid, maybe we bring at the next work session or the beginning of the next meeting, maybe we have Ron Schwartz on here one more time. And I mean, maybe if he was willing to split the cost with us 50-50 to have the specs in the bid done, we're absorbing some of the cost, he's absorbing some of the cost, we can get the specs and bid done and maybe get this thing moving.
Well, that makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, he's going to benefit more than anybody else. So,
Yeah.
I'm sure the staff, we can figure out how to make that approach before the next meeting and report back to you.
Okay.
Okay.
all right.
Just remember, we meet next Thursday.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We got a short window.
that's fine. But maybe, I think if Ron really wants this and, I mean, Kim does bring up a good point. I mean, what the traffic engineers report said about the percentile of vehicles that speed in that area and so forth. It's definitely something that I'd like to consider, but I just don't think we should be stuck with the entire cost.
Yeah, 'cause
I'm fine with
we
asking
get-
him. Let's ask him one more time and see what he has to say.
Okay.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you, Frank.
Okay, thanks, Frank.
Managers report, Joe?
I have nothing for tonight, Board Chair.
Thank you, Joe.
You're welcome.
All right. Supervisors' comments, Ms. Cummings?
Well, it was actually last week. Last week I spoke about our DA doing his national drug take back, and I looked up some information on it at the National Drug Take Back Day. It was on I believe the 26th or 24th of October. There was a total of 14,362 pounds of medication that was collected. So I just thought I'd put that out to the public. And again, if anybody does want to drop off any of the medication, is at the police department, please, block out any personal information on there. And also, I did see an article, and I wanted to let the community know about Mr. Castle and his efforts for Thanksgiving this year to provide 300 prepared turkeys and stuffing meals to those in need in the community. Mr. Castle also has the help of Chef Nick Manillo, am I saying it right? And if I didn't, I apologize, of Met Catering. And if anybody would like to do this, you can contact Steve Castle, and his web address is castlegardencenter@verizon.net. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Mr. Shannon?
Yes, I don't have anything particular other than I had a Easterville Business Association meeting tonight, and they want us to help with the library putting up the wreath and the blue lights for the trees. And this is for vets and police who have been hurt or died on the job. We've done it in the past, and it's just a comment at this point, and hopefully Mark will be in good position to do that.
Do they have a proposed date for that, Ed? Or
December the 3rd.
December 3rd, thank you.
Right, but it's not going to be as big as it was before, primarily because of the pandemic, yeah, whatever. And it's going to be much smaller. We're not going to have the kids from St. Catherine. So, yeah, so it's much smaller than it was in the past. We're only going to have maybe 5 or 8 people, 2 religious and 3 people from the FBA. and hopefully the chief will come out and have a little speech for us.
Hopefully it doesn't rain.
And yeah, right. And hopefully the color guard can come out. We talked to the chief about that also. One other question or request was made is, can the FBI be part and parcel to our food drive, the township food drive? It can make it a community effort. I think it's probably a good idea because they are a big part of the community anyway. Other than that, I don't have anything else. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed.
Yep.
Mr. Kutsaratus?
Ray, I'm actually okay tonight. Thank you, though.
Thank you. Ms. Kaplan?
Sure. I know the library has the Toys for Tots going on until December 10th, and they are collecting new unwrapped toys. And they, just visit their Facebook page and their website for virtual events going on. And is Ryan with us still?
Yeah, I'm here.
Ryan, you're having a coat drive, a coat and hat drive.
Yes.
Would you talk about that for a moment?
So we're collecting used and new coats, hats, and gloves, and then we're going to get a hold of one lieutenant at Feasterville has connections with the Neshaminy School District, and we're going to give it to them so they can give to kids in need. And then we're also still doing the food drive, and Take a Bail Dance Studio called me. They're actually going to team up with us this month and help collect food for our food banks for the 2 churches.
And where can people drop off the, what is it exactly they're collecting?
Winter coats, hats, and gloves. And that's at 1500 Desire Ave at the old district court building. There's 2 green bins outside. One's for the clothing and one's for food.
And is there a deadline for that?
No, right now we just have it ongoing.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's all I have, Ray.
Thank you, Deb. I only have 2 things. Keep it quick. The first is the Lower Southampton Veterans Advisory Council will again be holding a Veterans Day ceremony 1 week from today, next Wednesday, November 11, 2020 at 4:30 p.m. at the Lower Southampton Township building in the front by the flagpole. So feel free to come out for a short, brief, and relatively small Veterans Day ceremony again next Wednesday at 4:30 p.m. And the last thing is I'd like to thank everyone yesterday that came out to vote. The lines were long. The volume was high, but patience ran high yesterday, and some people waited in line for hours and waited behind hundreds of other people to go in and do their civic duty and vote. And for everything that I heard in Lower Southampton at all the precincts, things ran rather quickly. So to all the poll workers and voters, thank you for coming out yesterday. That's all I have. If there's no other orders of business, we would need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion, yeah. Okay.
Motion's been made by Mr. Shannon. A second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Ms. Cummings. Ms. Cummings, your vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Kaplan?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Kutsaratus?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Shannon?
Yes.
Thank you. And Ray Weldy, yes. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next Thursday.
Thanks, guys.
Good night.
Thank you.
Brad, you guys have a good one.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Joe. Have a good one.
Hey, Ray, do we have an executive session now?
What's that?
Did I hear something about an executive session when I first got on?
No.
No. Okay.
I don't think anyone brought one up, did we?
No.
No, I don't remember it, no.
All right.
Wow.
Very good then, guys. All righty.
All right. Thank you.
Have a good night. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Bye-bye.